Delegitimized, pushed to the side and underestimated, Mary I had a difficult life. It's no wonder that she fought back the way she did. To attract the epithet bloody amid the violence of Tudor England takes some doing, but it's a name that has stuck for centuries to Queen Mary I. Join us today as we look at the ruthless things Queen Mary did. Those who did not follow her Catholic faith were burnt alive. Undeniably, the most known fact about Bloody Mary was that she loved to burn those who defied her at the stake. But initially, she didn't start out so. In the first month of her imaginary pregnancy, imaginary because she thought she was pregnant, but it turned out to be just an abdominal swelling, Mary began a Catholic reform. On November 25th, the Parliament repealed Henry VIII's Act of Supremacy, thereby going against her Catholic reform. This, however, angered Mary, who on December 18th upheld the medieval laws on heresy. Mary decreed a hunt for heresy, the punishment of which was death, and so began the mass executions. The first executions took place in 1555, and 5 people were condemned. The bravery with which some of the accused faced the punishment caused a public commotion which led the people to remain loyal to the Protestant faith, and in the following years, Mary ordered the execution of 240 men and 60 women to be burnt at the stake. Among these people there were well-known figures, but most were workers and traders. The most famous victim of the Marian persecutions was Thomas Cranmer, who had been Archbishop of Canterbury to both Henry VIII and Edward VI. Cranmer had been planning to enact a similar campaign against Catholics, but had fallen from prominence following Wyatts' early death. Academics argue that the religious violence of the Tudor age wasn't simply the reserve of one faction or monarch. Everyone who refused to bend the knee to the current ruling elite would wind up at the stake, regardless of their political tendencies. As disturbing as it is, some historians even argue that burning as a method of death was not simply brutal for its own sake. Instead, it was partially intended through foreshadowing the fires of hell to allow heretics one more chance to repent and in their final moments embrace the true faith. Fun fact, it was also recorded that some of the people being burnt would secretly tie gunpowder in sleeves around their necks, so that when the fire began to burn them, the gunpowder would explode, taking their heads in the process. This was done in order to end the suffering they felt quickly. Brutal. Those who turned their eyes from prosecutions were also burnt. Segueing from the fact just stated, those who were present at persecutions were not entirely safe, however. Why? Because whenever the bloody Queen Mary ordered a mass execution, everyone was expected to watch as the bodies of the accused were being burnt to death. If, however, she saw an observer at one of these executions looking away in fear or disgust, she would order her guards to tie that individual to a stake and set them on fire too. She believed it to be a sin for an observer to look away from an execution, because to her it meant that observer did not believe in the decision of God and his followers. She hung the dead bodies of her defeated enemies. From the beginning of Mary's reign, there was an important question on everyone's mind. Did the Queen want a husband? If so, who? Several candidates were suggested, but Mary had only one man in mind. She wanted to establish an agreement with Philip of Spain, son of his longtime protector Emperor Charles V. At 27, Philip was 11 years younger than Mary, and according to all reports, a worthy, serious, and boring man. His pompous ways made him deeply unpopular with the Spanish people. But that was not what Mary's advisors were most concerned about. As heir to the Habsburg Empire, Philip would inherit from his father total control of Spain and Holland, as well as large parts of the New World. If Mary married him, England ran the risk of becoming an insignificant part of the vast Habsburg domains. Even more worrying, the country would be ruled by a Catholic monarch with close ties to the Pope, something unthinkable for English Protestants. Against this background, Mary did everything to make her dream come true. On November the 8th, 1554, she announced her intention to marry Philip. Some important Protestants were against it, and the Parliament asked the Queen to marry an Englishman. Mary ignored it, and in January signed a marriage contract with Charles V. The announcement of the contract was cause for pessimism, and some nobles prepared the rebellion to replace Mary with her sister Elizabeth. Meanwhile, a fleet of French ships would prevent Philip of Spain from reaching England by sea. Only Lord Wyatt, an important figure in the side of the Protestants, executed the plans of the rebellion. At the end of January 1554, he assembled an army of 3,000 men. Without enthusiasm, Mary asked Parliament for help, and they declined. But on February the 1st, she made an inflammatory speech talking on marriage, saying that marriage was a matter of state, an important step for the future of the throne. It was a vibrant speech, and thousands supported her. As Wyatt made his way through the streets of London, he left destruction in his wake as he almost reached the Tower of London. There were several clashes, but he was defeated by Mary's supporters. As one of the leaders of the Protestants, Mary showed Lord Wyatt no mercy, as he was tried and executed along with 90 other conspirators. But that alone was not enough for the bloody queen. In order to strike fear into the hearts of anyone else who might try to defy her again, she ordered her guards to have their decaying bodies hung from the gallows, undeniably serving as a macabre example. Her bloody invasion of France. During her reign, Queen Mary did not show signs of wanting to conquer foreign lands, but as time went on and her faith in the Catholic reform grew, she decided it was time to expand and carry her ideologies to every part of Europe. This manifested itself in the form of an all-out invasion on France, and there was no one to stand in her way. Anyone who disagreed with her was either burnt alive or hanged to death alongside their entire family. She imprisoned her sister. The bloody queen wasn't kind to even her own family. When her father died, she even ordered her guards to cut open his body, retrieve his heart, and burn it to ashes because of the pain he caused her mother. She held an iron finger towards everyone. As her reign of terror grew, the Parliament of England began to take into consideration plans to overthrow the bloody queen and replace her on the throne with her sister, Elizabeth I. As plans began to move in motion and the coup began to take place, she figured out the plans of the higher-ups of England to overthrow her. She ordered her sister to be captured and interrogated in the London Tower, while she ordered every single person who had a hand in her coup to be burnt naked at the stake. With all that has been said, what do you think about the bloody queen? Which of her actions was the most shocking to you? Which other historical figures would you like us to talk about? Tell me your answers down in the comments section. Hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, hit the bell as well so you don't miss any video, because we have a lot more interesting things to come. See you soon.